Okay, let's dive right in. If you've ever felt the absolute pain of working in a massive front-end codebase, the kind where one tiny, seemingly innocent tweak somehow breaks the entire site, yeah, you are in exactly the right place today. We're going to unpack this incredible explainer on transforming those clunky, monolithic web apps into sleek, scalable micro-frontends, and we'll be doing it using single SPA. We're drawing from a really brilliant technical deep dive by front-end devs to completely rethink how we build for the web.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The monolithic front-end problem. 2. Enter single SPA. 3. 3 types of applications. 4. Building the root config. 5. Integrating React. And finally, 6. Why choose single SPA. Let's get to it.
Starting off with Section 1, the monolithic front-end problem. Imagine building a house, right? But it only has one giant room. Your kitchen, your bedroom, your bathroom, they're all just mashed together in this one space. So what happens when you decide you want to renovate the bathroom? If everything is packed together like that, changing one small detail forces you to practically tear apart the entire structure. You've got to move the bed, cover the stove. Actually, scratch that. You practically have to rebuild the whole house. It's a total nightmare.
That house analogy? It perfectly describes monolith architecture. It's an application where literally everything, the front end, the back end, the database, all the features, they are all tightly packed into a single codebase and deployed as one massive unit. Now, to be fair, a monolith is super easy to start with when your app is small. We've all been there. But as your application grows, having everything live in a single repository becomes a massive, massive liability.
And what makes these drawbacks so severe is how they completely kill the autonomy of your development teams. Think about a giant site like Amazon. They've got a team for authentication, one for product listings, a cart team, a payments team. In a monolith, trying to coordinate every single deployment is, well, it's practically impossible. One team is ready to ship, but another is halfway through a feature, and boom, the whole process stalls out. Plus, you can't just scale up the payment gateway on its own. You have to scale the whole app. And the absolute worst part? You are permanently glued to your tech stack. If you built it in an ancient version of AngularJS, guess what? You are stuck there forever unless you rewrite the whole thing.
Now here's the kicker. Backends evolved to solve these exact issues years ago. We shifted to backend microservices, giving us independent, autonomous teams and separate deployments. But ironically, while the backend was getting all sleek and agile, the frontend was largely left stuck in the past, bundled up as one rigid, massive repository.
Which brings us nicely to Section 2. Enter single SPA. The solution here relies on a concept called the micro-frontend. And this really just means dividing a large application into smaller, totally independent units. By splitting the UI up into smaller pieces, separate teams can use entirely separate repositories and their own CI/CD pipelines. So going back to our Amazon example, you could have totally separate teams handling the product search, the cart, and the payments. They don't step on each other's toes at all. They code, test, and deploy completely independently.
And here is the absolute star of our explainer, single SPA. It's essentially a JavaScript router for these front-end microservices. It acts as the central hub, bringing multiple single-page applications together into one seamless container. So instead of one massive app, single SPA dynamically stitches together completely different frameworks. We're talking React, Angular, Vue, on the fly, without the user ever noticing a thing.
Moving on to Section 3, 3 types of applications.
To build this architecture, single SPA breaks things down into 3 distinct types. First up is the application. This is a standalone micro front-end that entirely takes over a specific route in the browser to deliver a complete feature. So, for example, if a user goes to a /users route, a dedicated React user management application takes full control of the screen.
Next, we have the parcel. Now, this acts as a small, embeddable component that you can drop into any page without altering the URL. Think of like a tiny chart widget or maybe a notification bell sitting up in the top corner of your screen. It's totally self-contained, but it doesn't need to hijack the whole page route. And finally, we have the utility. This one handles all the invisible heavy lifting. It doesn't actually have any UI at all. It's shared, non-visual JavaScript logic that makes sure common functions, like a centralized authentication service or a complex math library, are shared seamlessly across all your independent front ends.
All right, Section 4, building the root config.
Bootstrapping the parent application, that central hub we talked about, is insanely simple using their CLI tool. You literally just run create single SPA,
Tell it you want to create a root config, enable their layout engine for routing, and give it an organization name so everything stays beautifully namespaced. The CLI automatically generates all the necessary Webpack files and entry points for you. It really is that easy.
Now, to make all this work, Single SPA enforces a pretty strict contract. Every single child application you connect absolutely must expose these exact 3 lifecycle methods to function properly. First is Bootstrap, which runs just once to initialize state before the first mount. Next is Mount, which fires off to activate and render the component onto the DOM whenever the user hits the right route. And lastly, Unmount, which deactivates and cleans up the DOM and any active timers the exact second the user navigates away.
Section 5. Integrating a React Microfrontend.
So, let's actually connect the dots. You create the child app very much like the root config using the CLI, just selecting React instead. But the real trick here is you run it in what's called a standalone mode. This compiles your React application and exposes it as a single JavaScript export file on your local network. You just need to note that specific exposed URL along with your organization namespace.
And the integration itself? It's shockingly simple. It literally just requires 2 lines of code in your parent application. First, you add that exposed child URL into your parent's import map, which is essentially just giving the child app a nickname. Then, over in your layout HTML, you just tell the Single SPA layout engine which route should trigger that nickname. And that's it. The parent downloads the child's code and injects it perfectly.
Section 6. Why choose Single SPA? Now, you might be wondering, why use Single SPA when tools like Webpack Module Federation are out there? Well, the true superpower of Single SPA is that it is fundamentally framework agnostic. While Module Federation is fantastic, it is typically meant for single technology stacks. Setting up different frameworks with it is, well, it's highly complex. Single SPA, on the other hand, was built from the ground up to make it a total breeze to seamlessly mix Angular, React, and Vue inside the exact same application, complete with superior lifecycle routing to keep it all stable.
So, I want to leave you with this fantastic question. If your backend evolved into independent microservices years ago, why on earth is your frontend still stuck inside one giant, fragile room? If your backend teams are enjoying the speed and safety of autonomous microservices, your frontend teams deserve that exact same agility. Hopefully, this explainer gives you the blueprint and the inspiration to finally break your frontend out of the monolith, grab Single SPA, and start building for the future.